Hi and welcome into another video. Today we'll be exploring another React hook, which is useEffect. Let's hop into the VS Code and see what we can do with it. Alright, we are back in the Visual Studio Code and we'll be using our previous project where we were going through useState. If you didn't see that video, I will link it down below, but just to give you a very brief overview, we have one component with a count and set count, and we have a page where we can increment this counter. So let's run it. And let's go to the browser at our local IP, and we will see that we have this counter with an initial state of 0 and text, and when we increment, the text changes to modify and the counter value goes up. So this is a useState, and today we are talking about useEffect. So let's import that. useEffect is also a very known hook and something that you will probably utilize a lot. It is to work with side effects inside your component. So before, when the React was more of a class-based than a functional one, it was doing the things for a component, let's say did mount, component will update, or component will unmount. So that gives us a very brief overview what useEffect will be used for. So let's instantiate the first useEffect. We are doing it also on the top level as the useState. So I will write useEffect, and we will just do a blank one. And here maybe let's throw a console log that useEffect called. Okay, let's do a inspect here on the console so we can see how it works. And I will do a console here. And as you can see, we are launching our website. useEffect is called, and with each increment, it will also be called. So the reason for that is that useEffect in this particular state launches every time the component was rendered for the first time or re-rendered when the useState changed. Another approach to useEffect is to add here an array. We call it a dependency array. What it does in this particular case, that this array will be blank, it will launch only once. So let's reload the page, and we will see that useEffect was called. It was in fact called 2 times because we are using React in a development mode. It's not a production one, and in development mode there is something for a developer and error chasing that it actually mounts 2 times to find some errors underneath. But this is topic for another discussion and another video. But right now, if I will click increment, you will see that useEffect is not called once more. So that's what it looks like. But let's say if we would like to do it on a dependency array. So whatever we will write here, if it will change, it will trigger a useEffect. So let's write here a change of the count. And let's do the experiment one more time. We have a useEffect called, and we do increment, and it is being called all the time. But maybe let's pinpoint it a little bit. Let's do that only to count.secret. We know that count.secret changes only once actually, because the initial value is text, and with each increment there is a text modified, but actually this text modified is only once. So let's refresh it one more time and see right now we had the initial useEffect called and one more useEffect called and nothing else. We usually the best approach for useEffect and the most common use is some kind of a data fetching. So let's create ourselves here a dummy fetching function. We will do a fetch dummy data, and we will do an async function here with just a promise for set timeout for a second or two, which will return us some string. So let's do it, and let's do here return. Let's return here. Yeah, let's return new promise, and we will do a resolve only. We don't need to do a return here because we're in an arrow function, and we will do set timeout and resolve it with a dummy data. So let's do it like this. Let's close all the parentheses, and right now we have a fetch dummy function which creates a new promise which will be resolved after 2 seconds, and we will get a dummy data here. And let's throw this once again here only for the blank array to start it one more time for the first time, and here we will do this fetch dummy data, and we will console log out those data here. So let's see how it will work. Let's refresh the page. useEffect called. We were waiting 2 seconds and got this data of dummy data back. And the usual thing that is being done is that this data goes to, let's say the state. So here, after all of that, we would do let's use this set count to update this secret. And you would use it normally when you, let's say, had a component which renders a list of products, users, or whatever, and you need this data to be fetched from third party or database or something. Then in useEffect, you would actually make this API call by Axios fetch or whatever, wait, and the useEffect will wait for those data to get back, and once they will be back, we would, let's say, update the state and render the list. So at the end here, let's do a set count. And we will use a previous state of the count, leave the value as it was, but we will update the secret to this dummy data taken from this fetch dummy data function. So let's go with that, and we see that after 2 seconds, the data are changing to dummy data. And now, of course, it will be overwritten by increment, but as you can see, it's a very useful function. Last thing that we will talk about today regarding useEffect is some called of a cleanup function. So if you would have a side effect that, let's say, would need to be clean when the component is being unmounted, like some kind of event listeners we would like to remove to not store them still in the memory, or some other stuff like counters from the set timeout or whatever, then we would use a cleanup function. Cleanup function is quite easy to set up because it's just a return of useEffect. So maybe let's instantiate ourselves a timer here. We will use a set timeout, and at this set timeout we'll do a timer called, and let's set it for, I don't know, 5 seconds maybe. So we have a timer. If we would get out of this component and get out of this page, then actually this would still run in our single page application. But we can clear this timer on a timeout. So let's maybe wait those few seconds. We'll see first the dummy data. 3 seconds later, we should see timer called. And now we would clean this up. So we will use a return, and we will just return a cleanup function. And this cleanup function will just clear this timeout so it will not stay in memory. We will not see here the thing from it, but if we would be changing the pages in, let's say, our single page application, this definitely would help, because we are aborting those timeouts here, or aborting some kind of a event listeners or whatever, so that we don't store it in memory as it is not needed. So this is a brief overview of useEffect and what you can do with that. So I hope you learned something, and see you in another video.